When fans overheard Taehyung and Jungkook whispering about a wedding date, the internet didn't just react, it detonated. It started as nothing more than a moment, a quiet one, the kind that wasn't supposed to exist outside four mirrored walls and the low hum of rehearsal speakers. The kind of moment that only mattered to two people who had spent years learning how to speak without being heard. "You just said it out loud," Taehyung murmured, his voice barely cutting through the cold air of the rehearsal room. Jungkook froze for half a second, not long enough for anyone to notice, long enough for Taehyung to notice everything. "I said it quietly," Jungkook replied, eyes flicking toward the half-open door, where the shadow of a staff member lingered for just a breath too long. The fluorescent lights buzzed above them, but that wasn't what made Taehyung's heart race. It was the way Jungkook's voice had softened when he said it, the way the words had slipped out, too natural, too easy, like they'd been rehearsed 100 times in secret. "So, what's the date again?" Taehyung had asked moments earlier, pretending to adjust Jungkook's collar mic, his lips close enough that only Jungkook could hear him. Jungkook leaned in under the excuse of fixing his in-ear monitor and whispered back, "October 24th. It was supposed to be a joke. A private fantasy, an inside thing, something they said when the world felt too loud and pretending felt too heavy, a date that meant nothing and everything at the same time." But now someone else had heard it. Taehyung felt it before he understood it, that subtle shift in the air, that feeling you get when a secret stops being yours. "Did anyone?" Taehyung started. Jungkook stepped toward the door and gently pushed it closed. Click. Silence. Taehyung turned his back to him, running a hand through his hair, his reflection in the mirror looking calmer than he felt. His hands were shaking. "Why did you answer me like that?" he asked quietly. "You know how it sounds." Jungkook didn't reply immediately. He leaned against the mirrored wall, staring at his own reflection, the version of himself everyone knew, calm, controlled, untouchable. But the real one was standing right there with Taehyung. "Because I wanted to know how it felt," Jungkook said finally. "To say it, to hear it out loud." Taehyung's shoulders tensed. "You know we can't joke like that," he muttered. "Not here, not now, not when everyone is watching everything we do." Jungkook exhaled slowly. "I wasn't joking." Taehyung turned around. "What?" "I meant it." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They just stayed there between them, thick and heavy, like the air before a storm. And that storm was already forming 3 rooms down the hall. Mina, one of the stage lighting interns, stood frozen in the corridor with a tablet clutched to her chest. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. She was just looking for equipment. But the words had reached her before she could stop them. "Wedding date. Taehyung Jungkook." Her mind replayed it again and again, the phrase looping like a broken track. Her fingers tightened around the metal frame of the door. She didn't know what it meant. She didn't know if it was real, but she knew one thing. It sounded too specific to be nothing. Inside the rehearsal room, Taehyung stared at Jungkook like he was seeing him for the first time. "You can't say things like that," Taehyung whispered, "not when it could cost everything." Jungkook's voice dropped. "Maybe I'm tired of everything costing us this." Taehyung didn't respond. He couldn't, because deep down, part of him already knew Jungkook wasn't wrong. Outside, Mina unlocked her phone. She typed one message. "Guys, I think I just overheard something serious. Taehyung and Jungkook were talking about a wedding date backstage." She hit send. Within minutes, it reached a makeup artist. The makeup artist told a dancer. The dancer texted her cousin. The cousin ran a fan account with over 300,000 followers. And that cousin tweeted, "Staff leak, Taehyung and Jungkook overheard whispering about a wedding date backstage. Not kidding." 1 hour later, the phrase Taehyung wedding date was trending #1 worldwide. Back in the rehearsal room, neither of them knew yet. Taehyung sat on the bench, rubbing his palms together, trying to ground himself. Jungkook stood by the window, watching clouds roll over the city like a warning. "You're not serious," Taehyung said finally. "You just say things in the moment." Jungkook looked up. "No, I've been thinking about it for a long time." Taehyung closed his eyes. "Then you're being reckless," he whispered. "Because whatever this is between us, it only works when it stays hidden." Jungkook didn't answer right away. "I don't think it works anymore if it stays hidden." A knock interrupted them. A manager peeked in, his expression already tense. "Can I talk to you two for a second?" The moment they checked their phones, everything changed. Mentions, tags, notification, thousands. Fan edits of blurry rehearsal footage, screenshots, slow-motion clips, captions screaming the same sentence over and over. "Did you just say the wedding date out loud?" Taehyung felt his stomach drop. "We didn't even say whose wedding," he whispered. Jungkook swallowed. "But they've already decided it's ours." Outside, the sky darkened. Online, theories multiplied. Every glance, every touch, every moment from the past 5 years was being rewritten into proof. And inside the room, the truth sat between them like a ghost neither of them could ignore anymore. Taehyung finally looked at Jungkook, his voice barely steady. "So what do we do now?" Jungkook met his gaze, something fierce and fragile burning in his eyes. "We either run from it," he said, "or we let them believe a story and choose how it ends." Behind them, the door clicked softly. This time, not from their hand. The meeting room felt colder than the rehearsal studio. Not because of the air conditioning, but because of the silence. The kind that wasn't empty, just heavy with everything no one wanted to say first. Taehyung sat with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the dark screen at the end of the table. Jungkook sat beside him, one leg bouncing unconsciously, his phone face down like it was burning through the glass. 3 executives sat across from them. Their manager stood near the door, pretending to check emails while clearly listening to every breath. On the screen behind them, frozen mid-frame, was a blurry still from the rehearsal footage. 2 silhouettes too close, 2 heads leaned in, one caption circled in red. "Did you just say the wedding date out loud?" The CEO broke the silence first. "We have a situation." Taehyung exhaled through his nose. "We noticed." The CEO didn't smile. "This is already bigger than a rumor. It's trending in 12 countries. Dispatch has contacted us. So have 3 international outlets." Jungkook finally looked up, "But we didn't confirm anything." "That doesn't matter anymore," one of the executives said calmly. "It's not about what you meant. It's about what people think they heard." Taehyung leaned forward, elbows on the table. "So what are you saying? That we deny it?" The CEO hesitated, then said, "We have options." He clicked the remote. The screen changed to a slide titled Public Response Strategy. Option 1, we say it was a joke, a misunderstanding, staff misheard. Jungkook frowned, "And that works?" "It works short term," the executive replied. "But it also creates cracks. Fans don't forget, they archive everything." Taehyung looked at the next slide. Option 2, we say nothing, let it fade. "And if it doesn't fade?" Jungkook asked. The CEO looked at him carefully. "Then it grows." Taehyung felt something tighten in his chest. "So basically," he said quietly, "we either lie or we hide." The room went still. The CEO didn't deny it. "Your images are not just personal," he said gently. "They're part of a brand people project onto you. They build emotional narratives. When you disrupt that, intentionally or not, it becomes volatile." Jungkook laughed once without humor. "We didn't plan to disrupt anything. We were just talking." "And now millions of people think you're engaged," the executive replied. "That's the reality." Taehyung stared at the table. "Do you know what's the worst part?" he said softly. "It's not even that they believe it, it's that they feel entitled to it." No one answered. The CEO folded his hands. "There is a third option." Both of them looked up. "We lightly play into it," he said. "Not confirm, not deny. We give fans crumbs, appear together more, smile. Let the mystery stay romantic but harmless." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "So we turn it into content." "We turn it into control," the CEO corrected. Taehyung stood up. "So our choices are: pretend it's fake, pretend it's real, or disappear from each other in public." The CEO nodded slowly. "That's the industry." Taehyung laughed, this time bitter. "And where exactly in those options do we get to just exist?" The room stayed silent. Because there was no answer for that. After the meeting, they didn't speak in the elevator. Not until the doors closed and the building started moving down. Jungkook broke first. "Do you want to avoid me?" he asked quietly. Taehyung didn't look at him. "I don't want to lose you." "That's not what I asked." The elevator hummed. Taehyung finally met his eyes. "I'm scared," he said. "Not of the fans, not of the headlines. I'm scared of what happens if this stops being ours." Jungkook swallowed. "You think I'm not scared?" Taehyung shook his head. "No, I think you're braver than me." Jungkook smiled faintly. "Or maybe I'm just more tired of pretending." The doors opened. They walked down the hallway side by side, not touching, not looking, like two people who knew the cameras were always somewhere, even when they couldn't see them. Later that night, Taehyung stood alone on the rooftop. The city stretched beneath him, endless and loud and indifferent. The wind was cold, biting through his jacket, but it felt better than the pressure inside his chest. He heard footsteps behind him. "You always come up here when you need space," Jungkook said. Taehyung didn't turn around. "Maybe I just like pretending the world is smaller from up here." Jungkook stepped beside him. "The company wants us to stage a photo shoot." Taehyung blinked. "What?" "Matching outfits, soft lighting, something ambiguous but affectionate. Their words." Taehyung let out a slow breath. "So we become proof." "Or bait," Jungkook said. They stood there in silence, the city lights flickering below like a million watching eyes. "Did you mean it?" Taehyung asked suddenly. Jungkook turned to him. "Mean what?" "The date." Jungkook hesitated, then nodded. "October 24th. It's your parents' anniversary, right?" Taehyung froze. "You remembered that?" "You told me once," Jungkook said softly, "when you were drunk and sad and pretending you were." Taehyung laughed under his breath. "I barely remember that night." "I do," Jungkook replied, "because it mattered to you." Taehyung looked at him then, really looked at him. "And you still said it out loud." "Because I wanted it to be real somewhere," Jungkook said, "even if it couldn't be real everywhere." The wind picked up, cold and sharp. Taehyung whispered, "So what now?" Jungkook watched the skyline, eyes reflecting the lights. "We don't fake it, we don't deny it, we don't perform it." He turned back to Taehyung. "We just keep it ours, quietly, carefully." Taehyung studied his face. "And if they never stop watching?" Jungkook smiled, not confidently but honestly. "Then at least they won't be the ones deciding what it means." For the first time since the whisper, Taehyung felt something other than fear. Not relief. Not certainty. But something close to hope. The next morning didn't feel real. It felt staged, like the kind of quiet that only exists right before something collapses. Taehyung arrived at the building early, hoodie pulled low, headphones on but no music playing. He walked past staff who smiled a little too carefully, nodded a little too quickly, avoided eye contact a little too obviously. Everyone knew. No one said anything. In the practice room, Jungkook was already there, stretching. His reflection multiplied endlessly in the mirrors. For a moment, they just looked at each other through the glass, neither moving, neither speaking, like two people unsure whether the other still existed the same way as yesterday. "You didn't sleep," Jungkook said. Taehyung shrugged. "Neither did you." Jungkook smiled faintly. "I kept thinking about how one sentence can rewrite 5 years." Taehyung exhaled. "The internet is good at that." They went through rehearsal like ghosts. The choreography was sharp, the music was loud, the smiles were automatic, but everything between them felt amplified. Every glance lasted too long. Every brush of hands felt too intentional. Every distance felt too forced. By noon, it was already trending again. Not the wedding this time. Their body language. A fan account posted a slowed-down clip of Taehyung watching Jungkook tie his shoelaces. Caption, "Tell me this isn't love." Another thread compared today's rehearsal to one from 3 years ago. Title, "They used to stand closer. What changed?" Taehyung scrolled without meaning to. He hated himself for it. "They're analyzing how I breathe," he muttered. Jungkook sat beside him on the floor. "They always have, we just didn't notice." Taehyung locked his phone. "The company sent me a message." Jungkook looked up. "What kind of message?" "They want us in a media strategy meeting tonight. PR, legal, image team, all of them." Jungkook laughed softly. "So the Avengers of damage control." Taehyung didn't laugh. Jungkook noticed. "You think they'll make us lie?" "I think they'll make us perform," Taehyung replied. "And I don't know which one scares me more." The meeting room that evening was darker than the one before. Blinds closed, lights dim, a large screen filled with charts and headlines. Public sentiment analysis, engagement metrics, fan emotional mapping. Taehyung felt like he was watching a documentary about himself, except none of it felt real. The PR director spoke first. "Your unscripted moment created a narrative vacuum," she said, "and fans filled it, passionately." Jungkook crossed his arms. "So what's the fix?" The legal rep leaned forward. "We suggest a neutral public statement, something brief, something controlled." Taehyung frowned. "Controlled how?" The PR director clicked to the next slide. A draft appeared. "We want to clarify that recent rumors were the result of a private conversation taken out of context. There is no wedding or engagement planned." Taehyung stared at it. "That's not a lie," she continued, "but it closes the door." Jungkook looked at Taehyung. Taehyung looked back. "There is no wedding," Jungkook said slowly, "but that's not what this is about." The room went quiet. The PR director tilted her head. "Then what is it about?" Taehyung spoke before he could stop himself. "It's about the fact that we're not allowed to speak without it becoming a headline." Silence. The manager cleared his throat. "Taehyung, we understand, but—" "No," Taehyung said, his voice steady but tight. "You don't, because this isn't about rumors, it's about ownership. Everyone thinks they get to decide what our relationships mean." The legal rep sighed. "With respect, that's the cost of visibility." Jungkook leaned forward. "Then maybe visibility shouldn't cost this much." The PR director studied them. "So you don't want to deny it?" Taehyung shook his head. "I don't want to explain it." The room froze. "That's not an option," the manager said. Jungkook met his gaze. "Silence is an option, you just don't like it." The PR director exchanged looks with the legal rep. "If you say nothing," she said, "the speculation continues." Taehyung replied quietly, "It's continuing anyway." A long pause. Finally, the PR director spoke again. "If we don't release a statement, then the next step is controlled separation, fewer public interactions, less shared content, no private moments caught on camera." Taehyung felt something crack in his chest. "You want us to avoid each other?" Only in public, the manager said quickly, for a while until it calms down. Jungkook's hands clenched under the table. We've trained together for 10 years, he said. Now we act like strangers because people got too curious. It's temporary, the PR director insisted. It's protection. Taehyung nodded slowly. If that's what it takes. Jungkook turned to him sharply. You're just agreeing. Taehyung didn't look at him. I'm choosing survival. The meeting ended with no hugs, no closure, just a quiet agreement that didn't feel like one. In the hallway outside, Jungkook stopped Taehyung. Is that really what you want? Taehyung smiled tiredly. It's not about what I want. Jungkook stepped closer. Then what is it about? Taehyung hesitated. Then whispered, it's about not losing everything. Jungkook searched his face. And what about not losing us? Taehyung couldn't answer. That night, they didn't sit together in the van. They didn't walk in together. They didn't post anything. Fans noticed within minutes. The comments changed tone. Why are they distant? Did the company separate them? Is this damage control? So the rumor was real. Taehyung lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, phone buzzing endlessly on the nightstand. He finally opened one message. It was from his mother. Are you okay? You've been on the news again. He typed back. I'm fine, just work. He stared at the screen for a long time before sending it. Across the hall, Jungkook sat on the floor of his room, back against the wall, guitar untouched in his lap. He opened his notes app. Typed one line. October 24th. Then deleted it. The next day, they were scheduled for a radio appearance. 2 chairs. 1 table. 1 camera. They sat with perfect posture. Answered every question. Laughed at every joke. But never once looked at each other longer than a second. Fans clipped the broadcast within minutes. Title, they're acting like coworkers now. Taehyung watched the clip later alone. He didn't recognize himself. During a break, Jungkook passed him in the hallway. Their shoulders brushed. Just barely. Jungkook whispered, so quietly only Taehyung could hear. This feels worse than the rumors. Taehyung swallowed. At least the rumors meant something. Jungkook stopped walking. Taehyung didn't. Because stopping felt too much like choosing. The next week blurred. Every public appearance, every rehearsal, every live broadcast became a test of restraint. Taehyung and Jungkook moved like parallel lines, close enough to feel the tension, far enough to avoid feeding speculation. Fans analyzed every blink, every tilt of the head, every accidental touch. Every quiet laugh was edited, slowed, replayed, captioned. Every rehearsal video uploaded within minutes. Every rumor exploded again, then again and again. Taehyung sat alone in the practice room one afternoon, legs crossed, stretching his arms over his head. The mirrors reflected a version of himself he no longer recognized. Calm, composed, controlled. The version he showed the world, but inside his thoughts raced like wildfire. Jungkook's voice startled him from across the room. You've been quiet all morning. Taehyung lowered his arms, just thinking. About you, his voice was almost too soft to be heard. Jungkook's lips pressed together, trying to suppress a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Taehyung knew it. He always knew. That was the problem. They couldn't act normal, not really, not with the internet watching every second. About the rumors. About us. The word hung in the air. No longer private, no longer secret. Fans had twisted whispers into headlines, speculation into truth. Now, even the smallest gesture between them carried weight. We can't do this anymore, Jungkook said quietly, not pretending like it doesn't matter. Taehyung looked down at his sneakers. And what do you want to do? Jungkook leaned back against the mirrored wall, arms crossed. I want to move without thinking about the headlines. I want to exist without being analyzed. Taehyung closed his eyes briefly. He knew that feeling, the suffocating pressure of every interaction being under a microscope, the fear that if he smiled too widely or laughed too loudly or leaned too close, it would be spun into something else, something more, something unreal. A notification pinged on his phone. He ignored it. Another, and another. Each one a reminder that the world outside was still watching, still speculating, still deciding what they were allowed to be. You can't just ignore it forever, Jungkook said. They'll create a story with or without us. Taehyung sighed. Then maybe it's time we tell our own story. Jungkook's head snapped up. Now. Not everything, not like that, but we choose what matters to share. Not them, not the press, not the fans, us. Jungkook nodded slowly, a weight lifting slightly from his shoulders. Control the narrative. Yes, but quietly, carefully. They moved through rehearsals after that with a subtle, unspoken agreement. Glances were shorter, smiles measured, but when no one was looking, they allowed themselves small comforts. A hand brushing past a shoulder, a shared smirk at a mistake in choreography, a quiet word of encouragement before a verse. Nothing that could be recorded, nothing that could be used against them. Only moments that belonged solely to them. Back in the dorm that evening, the living room smelled faintly of jasmine tea. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Taehyung curled on the couch, blanket over his knees, staring at the floor. Jungkook joined him, holding 2 mugs. For us, Jungkook said, setting one down. For now, Taehyung replied. They drank in silence, the only sounds the rain and the quiet hum of the city below. Outside, social media continued its frenzy. Fans dissected every minor movement of the day's rehearsal, every slight smile, every avoidance. But inside, for this brief moment, there was still calm, still ownership, still something private in a world that demanded public. A week later, the company pushed for a staged photo shoot. Matching outfits, curated sets, rehearsed smiles. PR strategists were adamant. Fans needed closure. They wanted a narrative. They wanted confirmation. Taehyung and Jungkook listened, silent but firm. The images they were being asked to create felt like a lie. Carefully posed moments disguised as natural intimacy. Everything calculated. No, Taehyung said quietly. We're not doing it. Jungkook looked up at him, eyes wide. We could be seen as difficult. I'd rather be difficult than fake, Taehyung replied. We're not actors in someone else's story. After a long pause, Jungkook nodded. Then we don't feed the rumor, we don't confirm, we don't deny, we just exist. The team exchanged nervous glances but eventually conceded. Taehyung and Jungkook left the meeting feeling a strange relief. It was like pulling themselves from quicksand. They hadn't surrendered. They hadn't lied. They had simply chosen their own terms. That night they sat on the rooftop overlooking the city skyline. The air was cool, the lights endless. Taehyung rested his elbows on his knees, watching Jungkook across from him. You know, Jungkook said, breaking the silence, they'll never stop talking. Let them, Taehyung replied. We can't control them, only us. Jungkook smiled faintly. You're always so calm when everyone else is losing their minds. Not calm, Taehyung said softly. Controlled just for me. Jungkook shifted closer. Their shoulders nearly touched, just for a moment, not for anyone to see, not for anyone to analyze, just for themselves. The rain from earlier had stopped, leaving the city washed and shimmering. It felt like a small victory, like a fleeting peace in a storm that refused to end. The next morning, social media was already alive again. Screenshots from the previous day, comments, reactions, speculative posts. But Taehyung didn't check. Jungkook didn't check. They moved through the day anchored by the quiet promise they had made to each other, to protect what mattered, to define their own truth, to remain real in a world that demanded fantasy. During a rehearsal break, Taehyung sat cross-legged, tuning his guitar. Jungkook approached, handing him a lyric sheet. "You ready for this?" Jungkook asked. "For us," Taehyung replied. "For everything," Jungkook said. "All the whispers, all the speculation, all the noise." Taehyung nodded. "Then let's play." They performed through the song, every note a tether between them, every harmony a secret code. No one else needed to understand. No one else needed to interpret. It was theirs. And for that hour at least, the world outside did not exist. Only the music, only the rhythm, only the quiet connection that refused to be stolen. When the session ended, they didn't speak immediately. They lingered in the empty studio, listening to the echo of the last chord. Taehyung exhaled, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "You think they'll ever understand?" Jungkook shook his head. "Doesn't matter, we do." The lights dimmed, the instruments rested, and for the first time in days they allowed themselves to simply exist, together quietly on their own terms. The world could wait, the story could wait. For now they were just Taehyung and Jungkook, not a headline, not a speculation, not a narrative, just themselves. The days that followed were a careful balance. Every rehearsal, every public appearance was a performance of normalcy, but behind closed doors, Taehyung and Jungkook's connection deepened in ways no one could see. They spoke in subtle gestures, quick glances, soft smiles, language only they understood. A hand brushing a shoulder, a shared smirk, a whispered note. It was enough. Social media remained relentless. Screenshots, clips, GIFs, fan edits, conspiracy threads, they were everywhere. The term wedding date was repeated, dissected, embellished. Fans speculated endlessly. Every time they were seen together, it was analyzed. Every laugh became a headline, every glance a confession. The rumor mill spun faster than anyone could keep up. Taehyung had learned early on that silence could be louder than words, but the weight of that silence was growing. One afternoon, during a brief break in rehearsal, Taehyung wandered to the rooftop again. The wind was strong, carrying the hum of the city below. He leaned on the railing, thinking about everything, the whispers, the trending topics, the pressure to maintain appearances. Jungkook joined him silently, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You're thinking too much," Jungkook said quietly. "Am I?" Taehyung didn't respond immediately. He looked out at the horizon, at the endless sprawl of buildings bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. "I can't stop thinking," he admitted finally. "About what they're saying, about what they think they know, about what we're supposed to be." Jungkook handed him a cup, their fingers brushing briefly. "Then let's focus on what we know," he said softly. "About us." Taehyung exhaled slowly, eyes dropping to meet Jungkook's. The world outside could speculate all it wanted, but here, now, it didn't matter. Not fully. "Us," he whispered. And for a moment the chaos of the world outside faded, leaving only the quiet connection between them. Back in the rehearsal room, the atmosphere was tense but familiar. Cameras were pointed at the stage, staff and crew moving efficiently, yet there was an unspoken understanding. Some things weren't for recording, some moments weren't for public consumption. When Jungkook made a mistake in choreography, Taehyung gave him a small, reassuring nod. Jungkook returned the gesture with a tiny, almost imperceptible smile. A subtle code, invisible to everyone but them. The media frenzy, however, continued unabated. A new rumor suggested they had secretly requested private hotel rooms during a world tour, a claim fabricated from a minor request for convenience. Headlines screamed innuendo. Fans debated endlessly. Publicists and managers scrambled to contain narratives, but Taehyung and Jungkook had decided they wouldn't feed the speculation. Not with words, not with staged photos, not with confirmation. They would exist quietly on their own terms. Late that night, in the quiet of the dorm, Taehyung strummed his guitar softly while Jungkook sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through lyric sheets. The city outside was alive with lights and sirens, but inside, there was a fragile sanctuary. "You think it'll ever end?" Jungkook asked after a long silence. Taehyung shook his head. "No, and even if it did, someone else would create another story. The point isn't ending it. The point is controlling what belongs to us. Jungkook nodded. Then we protect it quietly. Yes, quietly, Taehyung echoed. The next day, during a scheduled media briefing, the company attempted to stage a subtle narrative, suggesting they were being cooperative without revealing anything. Photos were posed, smiles were curated, but Taehyung and Jungkook maintained a delicate balance. Neither gave more than was necessary, neither confirmed nor denied. Every interaction was measured, every gesture carefully controlled. Yet even with that control, the chemistry, the closeness remained palpable, something fans could sense, even if it wasn't fully visible. During the break, Taehyung and Jungkook slipped away to a quiet corridor. "We're doing okay," Jungkook said quietly. "For now," Taehyung replied, eyes scanning the hallway to ensure no one overheard. "But it's exhausting, isn't it?" Jungkook smiled faintly. "It's worth it." Taehyung looked at him, and for the first time that day, the weight of the world outside seemed lighter. "You really mean that?" "I do," Jungkook said. "Every moment we share quietly, honestly, it's ours." That night they returned to the dorm, exhausted from the day but bound together by silent understanding. The city below shimmered like a field of stars, indifferent to the chaos of speculation. They didn't speak much, no need for words, but each small gesture, each brief touch, each shared glance reinforced the quiet promise they had made, to protect their truth, to choose each other, and to remain real. For Taehyung, the most profound lesson was simple yet overwhelming. The world could never define what existed between them. Fans could speculate, media could fabricate, companies could strategize, but there was an unspoken, untouchable space reserved solely for them. And in that space, they were free. The following morning, rehearsal began with renewed focus. The choreography was tighter, the harmonies sharper, but beneath it all was a tension softened only by their shared understanding. When a slip occurred, a small grin from one or a nod from the other was enough to realign everything. It was a silent language, a reassurance that despite the chaos, despite the attention, they still belonged to each other. Later, during a brief pause, Taehyung and Jungkook found themselves on the rooftop again. The city sprawled endlessly, lights flickering like distant stars. Taehyung exhaled, letting the wind carry his thoughts. "It's strange, isn't it? How one whisper can become a global spectacle." Jungkook nodded. One word, one moment, and suddenly everyone has an opinion, but opinions aren't reality. "No," Taehyung agreed, turning to face him. "Reality is what we choose, together." Jungkook smiled, faint but sincere. "Then we keep choosing it." Taehyung reached out, hand hovering near Jungkook's shoulder but stopped short. A subtle reminder, a quiet acknowledgement. Jungkook's gaze met his, a spark of understanding passing silently between them. The world outside would continue to speculate, analyze, and obsess. Headlines would scream, rumors would persist, fans would theorize endlessly. But Taehyung and Jungkook had reclaimed their narrative, not with words, not with public statements, but with their quiet, deliberate choices. Every whisper, every glance, every shared silence became a thread weaving their story, one that no one else could rewrite. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the city in hues of gold and pink, they stood together, side by side but not touching, a quiet defiance in their posture. The story the world wanted to write would never fully exist. Only the one they lived in stolen moments and whispered conversations, could be theirs. For the first time in days, Taehyung allowed himself a small, genuine smile. Jungkook mirrored it without a word. The rain from earlier had long since passed, leaving the city washed and alive. And for now, for this fleeting moment, everything felt exactly as it should, real, unguarded, and theirs alone.